The King of Podcasts Radio Network proudly presents the Broadcasters Podcast, where we dive deep into the media industry headlines and dissect the digital disruption that diverges the masses into the new media counterculture and away from the media establishment. Here is the King of Podcasts.
Tonight we're going to talk about a profile of media privilege. Meghan Markle, or Meghan the Dutchess of Sussex. We're going to focus on her here on the Broadcasters Podcast because for me, I know this is a bit of a kind of sleazy, gossipy mainstream topic, but for a mainstream figure like her and the career that she's had, we couldn't just let things go at, okay, she's royalty now. She married into the royal family and, good for her. But what she's done with herself since then and all the opportunities that she has and the way the mainstream, media culture is out there, traditional, big corporate mainstream media. And they have the thing where all the magazines and all these publications and all these TV shows, the entertainment shows out there, they can't help themselves when they get a chance to go ahead and talk about Meghan Markle. Anything that she says, anything that she does has to be out there in headlines. Plus the fact that she's now royalty, the royal coverage has to be out there very, very tabloidistic. Because that's just how it is. Now we're being susceptible to this. And I'm just saying to myself, when somebody gets so powerful and becomes so prominent and so noticeable worldwide, I hope that all of you content creators take this lesson to heart. I mean, if you can try to hold on to a little bit of, grounding yourself to where you come from and who you were. Because with her, it just bothers me. And the thing is, this is this is a star that I actually liked. There was a time I liked Meghan Markle. I liked her as an actress. I liked her as a character on Suits. She was Rachel Zane. And she was great on that show. But then, I don't know, she decided to just go in this route of, I don't know, man, it's bad. It's bad because now we're at this point of can't help herself. She has to continue along with what she does here. And I'm like, man, this just sucks. I'm so tired of it. For a show that was on for 8 years, right? And she was for 7 of those. And I say to myself, you go back and now a character was just likable. And then look, we see the dream come true for her. Good for her. She picked up Prince Harry. But it's when she has privilege and she wants to now, at 41 years old, on her podcast Archetypes, now she wants to go ahead and, really, BMC, bitch, moan, and complain. Because now that she's at this level, she can go ahead and criticize. That's the other thing, man. This whole idea of people needing to go back to where people were entertaining and where things are now. And everyone has to go ahead and get, not only just serious, but also has to be very sanctimonious and hypocritical. You want to just shit on what you did for yourselves. Horrible. But that's what Meghan Markle decided to do. I don't know. Now let's continue here. So Meghan Markle goes from Deal or No Deal, of which she doesn't think so. But we know that other briefcase models that were on the program, they all found opportunities to succeed and to excel in their careers outside of Deal or No Deal, the simple reality show from the early 2000s. She moves on and gets to Suits, and she has, a great, nice run on television as Rachel Zane, right? And then we go on, and when she finds Prince Harry, and all of a sudden we hear about the relationship, and it's going on while Suits is going on. And then she finds her way to get married. And now she's locked in for life. She'll be taken care of, pampered, coddled, and treated with the most royal, utmost effort for the rest of her being. Because she also has babies with Prince Harry. And with all that privilege and all that power and influence and status and clout. She can't help herself, but have to go ahead and feel like when everything is right for her, she has to be sanctimonious and say everything's wrong with everything else. If it's not some kind of a cause that she has, then we have to go and talk about, oh, she felt like a bimbo on Deal or No Deal. She felt objectified. And let me just remember this real quick, okay? Deal or No Deal, let me just make sure I have this right, because now it's trending. Show was in 2005. 2005, by the way. And that would make Meghan Markle, how old would she be right there? 24 years old. And you know what? Different time period. I mean, things were just much different in general when it came to how we looked at things on television and what was, kind of acceptable. Which now, everything that was acceptable even like 10 years ago is now just chastised and is being destroyed. Because there's just certain things you just can't do anymore. We know that, but what am I supposed to say here? Am I going to just continue to just, get on a soapbox and try to complain? No. But I think there's something to be said where the level of smugness of this 41-year-old divorcee of 4 years of royal bliss, even though she's been criticized and, ripped up in the tabloids, that's going to happen because you're royalty. That's just what happened. You married Prince Harry, and you know what? A lot of people don't think that was the best choice for Prince Harry. All right? But good for you. You locked him up. Many women probably idolize the fact you're able to do that because they wish they could have done it. But you did. Meantime, 2005, you felt like, oh, well, now I can go ahead and 17 years later, I'm going to wait 17 years to decide to start talking about Deal or No Deal. And from accounts we're finding out from the other briefcase girls that were on the show, she's lying. And she's wrong. And people are flashing back, which is the funny part. We're not getting that whole thing of where it's like some certain sides are going to pick others, like women, siding with her. No, it looks like we're getting a little bit different now. But let's go into the story of what actually happened here. That'd be good to start. She says working on Deal or No Deal made her feel not smart. She said, quote, I would end up leaving with this pit in my stomach, knowing that I was so much more than what was being objectified on the stage. Meghan, sweetheart, you got the chance to be on the show out of 40 women, I think, 39 women. And all I'm saying is, or was it 25? I forget. But what I will say is, no, it was 25. That's right. What you have to realize is, because of the fact that it was that, there could have been other women that could have easily taken your place and would have happily taken your place. But you felt there was a need to say something else. I don't know. But anyway, let's go and get into the story. So Meghan hosts her new Spotify podcast series called Archetypes. And her guest for the show is Paris Hilton. And she was talking to Paris Hilton about the bimbo stereotype. Kicking off the show, telling Paris that she was recently flipping through the channels on TV and came across Deal or No Deal, which brought back a lot of memories, she said. And Meghan shares that when she participated in the show, she was grateful to have a job to pay the bills while she auditioned for bigger acting roles. She was still bothered by how she was portrayed on the screen. Quote, I had also studied international relations in college, and there were times when I was on the set of Deal or No Deal, thinking back to my time working as an intern at the U.S. Embassy in Argentina and Buenos Aires, and being in the motorcade with the Secretary of Treasury at the time and being valued specifically for my brain. Here, I was being valued for something quite the opposite. Now, keep in mind, she does know how Hollywood works. It's still an old school system. And vanity and beauty are the reasons that many women get a chance more than others to get on camera or to be doing anything. But she said that, look, she was trying to look for other work. She participated in the show. She was getting paid. And She was doing just fine. Things happen differently. And so for her to go ahead and just talk about, okay, you decided to go to Hollywood to become an actress. What happened to the U.S. Embassy? What happened to the whole deal of being an intern and maybe working international relations? Oh, because you didn't agree that you weren't going to be any good at, or you just weren't going to follow up a pursuit. You always had something else to do. So you wasted a college degree, and now you're going to Hollywood, and, hey, your brains didn't get you money, your beauty did. And unfortunately, Hollywood is backwards. Many times, that's how it's going to work. And it's been like that since the beginning of Hollywood. So I don't know what she was thinking would be any different. She goes on and says, by the way, the story from Harper's Bazaar I'm reading from, the Dutchess ads. They don't even put a capital D, it's just the Dutch. She adds that before going out on stage, the models would line up to get lashes, extensions, broad paddings, and more, and would be given spray tan vouchers every week. So you know what? There was one woman I saw on Inside Edition that commented and said, absolutely not true. I have a story from Claudia Jordan, who was, by the way, she was quite popular for her time and did very, very well with her beauty because she was a Price is Right Barker's beauty. That's the thing. We used to have those things. You know what? I never heard so many people, so many women that were saying, oh, they were so objectifying and empowered. And you know what happened? Okay. You still have women that are models on these shows, but now you got men on the shows. Okay. Yeah. Good for the women. If they're watching on TV together, you can see some hunk of a guy on TV. Good for her. Good for her. Okay. She says, quote, it was a very cookie cutter idea of precisely what we should look like. It was solely about beauty and not necessarily about brains. You're opening up briefcases. She says now as a single mother, as a mother, right, married to royalty, right, with 2 kids, Archie Harrison, son 3, daughter Lilibet Diana 1. She says here, when I look back at this time, I will never forget this one detail. Because moments before we get on stage, there was a woman who ran the show. She would be there backstage, and I can still hear her. She couldn't probably pronounce my name at the time, and I knew who she was talking to, but she would go, Markle, suck it in. Markle, suck it in. It's show business. It's Hollywood. They care about the image. Not everyday people that could be on those shows, okay? You did. You were deemed beautiful right there. And you were. You fit right in. No question there. But you felt like there was something that you need to go and now come back. And honestly, you're kind of bashing the other women that decided to do this show. And, look, you were seen by, 20 million viewers on a regular basis? Because there was a lot of people watching TV back then. So that's what she said. And then she moves along and says, she quit the show eventually, moved on to other TV projects. Now, this is what she says overall as her summarizing her time at Deal or No Deal. Love that you can hear this, as this was part of the Institute of American Television. They do all those interviews with the people that have been into their careers, and they might, it's like the last documenting of what they were doing with themselves and their careers. So they go through a long, when the interview that goes through all their career. Well, she does her version of this and says, I was thankful for the job, but not for how it made me feel. Howie Mandel and the folks at Deal or No Deal, I'm sure they're so proud of you saying this. You're probably going to get some people to watch, get them to watch the show now, because Deal or No Deal does show on Game Show Network still. It is in rerun. Yeah, I was thankful for the job. Okay, there, and then slap, but not for how it made me feel, which was not smart. And by the way, I was surrounded by smart women on that stage with me, but that wasn't the focus of what we were there. What were you going to do on that show? The show is what the show was. Okay? The show wasn't the case. That's it. That's all you had to do. It was such a simple game show, by the way. They weren't going to do anything else that would be in the format that would make any difference. I don't know. You're not going to be in Vanna White. Okay? You're just not. That was what wasn't going to happen. He says, and I would end up leaving with this pit in my stomach, knowing that I was so much more than what was being objectified on the stage. So you were better than everybody else? Huh? You were better than everybody else? Right? Was that what you're saying? Objectified on stage? So much more. So much more. Then she says, I didn't feel like feeling forced to be all looks and little substance. And that's how it felt for me at the time, being reduced to this specific archetype. Oh, he's mentioning the show. Okay. They move along to Paris Hilton stories, and then they move along from there, right? Which is fine. Now, Meghan also says in the interview, and I'm not sure what they're trying to say this here, because they're talking about how Paris was spoken of being verbally and emotionally abused as a teen while in private school, and now an advocate against child abuse. Okay. Well, the one thing that is good is that Meghan says she is trying to push for federal legalization and going to DC. And yeah, it's just been so empowering, she says. Just really turned my pain into a purpose. And I almost think that maybe God made me go through this and gave me this special gift so that one day I could be the hero that I needed when I was a little girl and help save these children going from having to go through the torture that myself and so many others went through. I don't know exactly what she went through that she's talking about, and I'm not going to judge. But I guess this is also like the story is kind of out of context because they obviously went to some other sections in the interview. I have not listened to the interview, which is fine. They decided to go where they're going to go with this, and they said, okay. Now, let me just say, the thing is that, I know, yes, part of what I'm saying is there's an ungratefulness that I feel like this here, which everybody's talking about, which is correct. But what I do think is that I don't know if she necessarily went through the kind of abuse that Paris went through and talking about. Because she only referred to her time at Deal or No Deal, which as far as I know, she's talking about being objectified and feeling like a bimbo. But we're not hearing anything where it's like a Me Too movement where she was inappropriately touched, molested, or groped, or propositioned, or anything like that by anyone on the staff or at all. Sounds like nobody was doing that. And as far as I know, let's be honest here too, it wasn't as if they were necessarily inappropriately dressed. I mean, all the briefcase girls wore dresses, and yeah, they were slightly provocative. Some of the briefcase girls might have shown a little bit more than the others, which that might be true. But to me, I look and I say, you know, it's just kind of ironic she wants to go back and do this now and say that there was a problem with what she did. So I don't know what to think about that. So I want to take from one other story that might have given me some more information about this AV Club. And they also talked about the story. They didn't get a whole lot, especially with the Deal and No Deal stuff. There's other things that Meghan Markle says or is doing that everybody else is talking about. But sometimes, you know, there were some people that were talking about this. And she also added this is where the bimbo line comes in, that she was, quote, forced to be all looks and no little substance. She was reduced to the specific archetype, the bimbo. And there were people that actually have talked about this. So here's what we got so far. Famous people are mad at Markle's representation of Deal or No Deal. Whoopi Goldberg from The View spoke on her platform and argued that nobody's watching Deal or No Deal was objectifying the models. Nobody watching Deal or No Deal was objectifying the model, saying they're just thinking, I want the money. Yeah, it was $1 million. We're paying attention to that. I mean, she's actually right. There is a way where you could say that was something about like trying to ogle over the women. Like we kind of noticed them, but they're not necessarily more than just kind of like just there to just open the briefcase. We're not paying attention to them because they're all in solid colors. They all kind of look the same. And they're just, it's like something out of a Robert Palmer video. Yeah, they're sexy and they're beautiful, but they're not necessarily, you know, we're not staying on camera with those briefcase models for more than a couple of seconds for each time because they're switching from case to case. The game is being played. They're not focusing on any of the girls right away. So that's what I think they're coming from too. Now, Whoopi would say this, quote, that Vanna White isn't objectified on Wheel of Fortune because she's always in something interesting and beautiful. Correct. And if Markle felt like models on her show were being objectified, then that's on her because they're just doing their jobs as a performer. And in the View commentary, Sunny Hostin also noted that Markle's comments didn't make her think the way women with certain body types are treated by the entertainment industry. And then Whoopi would say, that's TV, baby. What did you think you were getting into? You were going into. She's right. You know, that's what the show was. That's the point of the show. And it objectifies women can be both true. She's right. And then Whoopi Goldberg made her point, and she is valid on her point. She gets it. Then you also have Claudia Jordan, who is currently was a former Housewives of Atlanta cast member, former Price is Right Barker's Beauty, among other things. In her case, she said that nobody was forcing them to be bimbos, but it was a modeling job, and they all knew what was going in. And another Deal or No Deal model, Donna Feldman, who was on the Oval, she told HollywoodLife.com that nobody was ever treated like a bimbo while they were on the show, but that even if the show was only interested in how she looked, it didn't stop her getting other jobs with her personality or intellect or worth ethic. Correct. You not ever checked and see who came out of the Deal or No Deal briefcase heroes and, where are they now? I love to find that answer because you know what? That's the real point. Where did they come from? Ask yourself that question. Where are they now? I would love to know and see if any of them have really excelled. Like, it would be kind of nice to see. And so I want to just look at this real quick. This is April 30th, 2021. And the 10 celebrities who were briefcase models on Deal or No Deal. Let's talk about this real quick. This is good. So we know Meghan Markle was briefly on the second season in Deal or No Deal. Chrissy Teigen was, in her words, gently replaced after a few episodes. Chrissy Teigen, the wife of John Legend. And she was on the second season. Then you have the star of Selling Sunset, Amanza Smith, was on for 2 seasons. How about that? Then you have an actress, Haley Marie Norman, who is on the show AP Bio. She was holding case number 25 for 3 seasons. And then Claudia Jordan, who held number 1 for 4 seasons. We know her as previously The Price is Right. She was also on Below Deck. She also hosted a reunion for Love and Hip Hop Miami. And she's working on multiple productions. How about from Survivor Nicaragua, Brenda Lowe? She was on Deal or No Deal. And then the person that now runs a hair company, Layla Milani, was on the show. And she held number 13 for 4 seasons through 2009. Now she has a supplements company called Hairtaman and Layla Milani Hair, an extensions line that now offers brushes and other styling tools. She has 1.4 million Instagram followers as of this report on Instagram. Then you got Anya Monsikova. She's now an actress. And with her, she had roles in Iron Man 2, Melissa and Joey, Bones, The League, Ray Donovan, and most recently, SWAT. And she's a producer for Echo ATL, a production company based out of Atlanta. And another woman we just talked about, Donna Feldman. She was on the nighttime soap opera Fashion House and also appeared in an episode of the 2020 reboot of Magnum P.I. in 2020 and had a small role in the Adam Sandler movie You Don't Mess with the Zohan. Then you had Anchal Smith, who was on the 5th season of Deal or No Deal, but then competed on America's Top Model in 2006. So, for Meghan Markle, arguably, she's done the best in her career because of this show. She's done the best. And as we said, what she said on the article, which is this really, it's antithetic to what she's actually trying to say. And that's the problem. It was, and I get it. She was, I was so much more that was being objectified on stage. Forced to be looks and almost little substance. But everybody noticed you. And believe it or not, beauty is going to be the beholder of you getting work in Hollywood. And Whoopi Goldberg actually just said it outright. The real smart part out loud. Just said what is actually how it is. Honest. So now we're leaving that story behind. I just want to make sure to make the point that for all those content creators out there, for those of you that might get famous, listen to this program. that you're end up getting famous because, and you just might be one of those people that just might catch this program. And if you get that kind of celebrity, there is something to be said about, hopefully you have people around you and yourself that you can keep yourself a conscience where appreciate where you came from. And just because you think it might be a good narrative, just to try to say something to make you feel like you are, well, there's a thing where some people feel like they need to get and act like they're oppressed, being belittled. And sometimes women, there are certain women that'll do that or just feel like they need to be, well, I mean, part of it is, she's doing this show with Paris Hilton. She's trying to get her show off the ground. And so I wouldn't be surprised if she tried to put the show together and she's trying to get people to listen to the program. So they're basically saying, okay, listen, she's saying this and she wants to get people to really get caught up in like, oh, they want to do something where, she's going to say something about what happened to her just because she wants to create some kind of a narrative that will be, so people will listen to the show. I mean, what else are we going to listen to her for? I mean, it's interesting. She gets a major guest on here. And I haven't heard one thing about anything that she said to any of these guests at all. She defines archetype in her first episode, and just for like a 90-second piece. She's talked to Serena Williams, Mariah Carey, Mindy Kaling, Margaret Cho, Lisa Ling, Deepika Padukone, Jenny Slate, and Constance Wu, and Paris Hilton and Elisa Schlesinger. Like, she's going through a lot. And I'll give her credit. At least she's somewhat consistent, I think. Well, she missed like a month between September and September 4th, but that's because of Queen Elizabeth. So yeah, that would make sense. But hey, you know what? If she wants to get her show out there, she wants to get it noticed. Okay, I get it. She's getting paid to do this too. Probably making good money for this. And what is she making money for? It's not because of her talent. It's because of who she is. See, she's being objectified again. Now it's not just because of her looks, it's because of her status. And what she's really saying, as I close out this argument, she really doesn't mind if her status and her clout is objectified. She wants to be noticed like that. She wants you to notice her that way. She wants you to see her in the clothes she wears and what she does for the babies and how she treats Prince Harry. She wants everyone to see that. It's a very narcissistic thing to do, but you see this of her. She's grown in power. She's attained influence, clout, and everything that she could want on earth. I guess that fulfills her. And now with her power, she can go ahead and influence and say, okay, woe was me. I was never perfect. And she wants to try to normalize herself with the rest of the world. You really can't do that now that you're famous. I mean, you just can't do it. So that's what's going on there. Meghan Markle. She has a platform. I wish that she didn't feel like she needed to go and say things like that. I mean, what happens is that she actually kind of just pissed some people off. But she doesn't mind. She doesn't care anymore. She obviously doesn't care. You can do whatever she wants now. So that's her deal. So let's talk about Hollywood, because Hollywood is changing a lot. And there's so much going on that quietly doesn't get talked about much. But Peter Bart, who usually can write himself a pretty good op-ed and Deadline, put out a good story as I record today about how a coat of paint on the Hollywood sign can't obscure industry's erosion of creative courage. And this is a point I think is being well made. The thing is, we have nothing that's really creative out there. We know of the rehashing and the recreation of everything that's going on. Intellectual property by all these big media corporate companies. They're going to do what they're going to do to create content. And they're just going to feed us an endless array of the same stuff we've been watching for years. With a little bit of a change, a little bit of a tweak, a little bit of a twist. So he says that he's been assaulted by studies and reports describing how Hollywood, the industry town, has essentially surrendered its leadership in the universe of pop culture. The message: the industry has dimmed its vision, even though the Hollywood sign may linger on. Yes, surrendering its leadership in the universe of pop culture. Because pop culture, Hollywood no longer is the bastion, no longer the beacon of pop culture. It was, but not anymore. What is being produced and done in Hollywood that is catching the attention? Well, Peter Bart continues on. Whether in music, social media, or other platforms, a young consumer, even in Hollywood, is likely hooked on the same pop culture diet as their equivalent in Mumbai. Whether it's Afrobeat or Squid Game or a video from Prague, the energy of innovation indeed is growing worldwide while Hollywood sags. And this is a result of all the corruption, choking of creativity in all different ways. From the unions, from who's in control and who's been in control for a long time and what they're doing with things. There's a whole lot there. And the other thing too is that it's the way that Hollywood likes to go ahead and make themselves feel better than everybody else and basically make everyday America that watches their movies, listens to their music, watches their TV, they are made like simpletons. Like, you're watching our stuff and we're going to talk over you. We're going to make you listen to us because we know better than you. Plus, it's the change that needs to be even more politically or socially charged narratives that are on our screens on a regular basis. You know what? Some people just don't want to care. Some people don't want to care about what's going on in the movies and watching movies that are having to put some kind of a narrative. And it doesn't matter if you like it or not. I'm just saying the audiences are speaking. They're making their point known. Look at the weekend chart for this week. Your number one movie was Halloween Ends, that broke $40 million for the week and ripped everything else. Smile, horror movie season, number 2, has made $71 million domestic. And then you look at other movies that are out there, and you know what? Top 10 is very rampant. You still got Top Gun in the top 10. That's made over $715 million domestic. Incredible. Bros barely has broken $10 million domestically. And I'm sure if I look at what they've done worldwide, probably not much more. Oh, only domestic do we have. $11.190 million. They had a budget on it. It's not going to make the money. It is a politically charged movie. It's trying to talk about, we know, Terrifier 2 is making more money than Bros. Barbarian, another horror type movie, thriller. Don't Worry, Darling, which of course we only know really pretty much got the praise because it did have pretty much an all-star cast. And the crisis that Olivia Wilde had put through, which if you want to listen about that, go back a couple of episodes, we talked all about that. Amsterdam, which I guess was just critically panned and just has not done well. Woman King, which even with the politically charged message, of empowerment for women, empowerment for black people, and no matter what the story is being said and what everybody will say about it, it was still an action movie, and it was a pretty good action movie, and it's made $60 million domestic. And I'm pretty sure people are buying this overseas because they are. $77 million total. It'll make its money back most likely. But that's what the movies are. And then the music, I mean, how many times do you see music that's coming out that makes a rise and goes right back down? Like if you look at the Billboard Hot 100 right now, there are certain artists that are always up there. But what's happening more than ever is that you're seeing a lot of the songs that are coming up. Like the only thing that's kind of controlling about music is that radio still has a control over it. Your number one song in the country for 3 weeks is Steve Lacy and Bad Habit, which came off of TikTok. Independent artists out of nowhere. And then you have other, commercial artists that are on here, but really it's like, that's all the radio playing that is contributing them to be at the top of the list, top 10. Otherwise, you look at how many streaming numbers there are for all these different songs that are out there on that chart, and it's a different contribution altogether. Let's move along here in this Peter Bart article. The data is occasionally ambiguous, but what it suggests is that consumers of pop culture worldwide are substantially cutting their preference for American products. I know, like I said, I listen to Dominican dembo music. I hear some of the Afrobeat stuff. I listen to a lot of music that's overseas in Europe, Eurodance, a lot. There was a World Trade Organization study that was done that imports from the U.S. constituted 25% in 2020, down from 40%. So a lot more people used to go and listen to more products and content and more entertainment from America. Now it's a lot less. Now, Netflix and its brethren are pushing hard for international growth. They have counter limitations in the U.S. market. Paramount Plus is now linking with Canal Plus in France. And U.S. cultural imports have increased almost sixfold over the past decade. Squid Game aside, because TikTok account belongs to a Senegalese Italian named Kabilame, posting mock media trends according to The Economist, and analyzing pop culture trends. The publication attributes the emergence of what is called the multipolar pop culture to the obvious phenomenon: economic growth and domination of the internet, which is the digital disruption, continuing to do what it does. The more consumers in one country are exposed to culture from other countries, the more adventuresome they are getting. And countries that are now developing a very strong music industry, India and Indonesia are two. Their share of language tracks have fallen from 52% to 31%. That means the amount of American music they listen to is less. Should Hollywood take all this personally? Well, let's be honest, they're going to stay out of touch. And it's going to continue that. So, one Hollywood power player has says, quote, the Hollywood studios have lost the big dream. Where are the big titles, the big star vehicle? Well, remember, it's the deterioration of the stars. And we talked extensively on the program about how the pandemic and the shutdown, the lockdown, really contributed badly to everybody out there. There's not much else. I mean, you can see the difference in what movies are being done and what people are really getting into. Something that's very large scale and massive. Because what's happening is Hollywood is trying to just create media that is for the mainstream, which is, there's a mainstream that people are just not touching base with. Because what Hollywood thinks is mainstream is not what mainstream is. And they're not even touching the counterculture, the crossover culture. They're not even trying to reach out to those people. They've given up on them. Instead, they want to go where they're going here. Steven Spielberg has unwittingly become a symbol for this more restrictive vision. And the filmmaker who once gave us Empire of the Sun or Schindler's List is now doing a story on his youth in Arizona, The Fabelmans, which will win its share of plaudits, but it still reflects these more modest expectations. James Cameron, who did Titanic and resuscitated Hollywood in 1997, will be probably win the next Oscar with Avatar: The Way of Water, but the other projected entries are more in the scale of Coda, last year's surprise winner, right? Which was not even on in a theater, it was on Netflix, right? Overall, Hollywood movies earned 21% less in summer than a year earlier, continuing the post-pandemic recovery, and summer typically accounts for 40% of all receipts. And so now we're at this point where Peter Bart only had so much time to talk about this, but he's right. Things are not good, and nobody's paying attention. So where the digital disruption continues to do its thing, and there's nothing's being said about changing that or making it so that these things do not continue to be, rampant. They're not fixing the problem. No. I don't know what they're going to do. Anyway, there's more. With this story, actually, I should I'll take this next story. A story from Ad News in Australia, adnews.com.au. They put an interesting story, and I think this is really pretty good. But again, I have to go somewhere else to look for it. The Generation Z view. They ask, why should you park your personality at the door in the media industry? So they talked to a woman that is in the industry, and she started her career in January 2020. Then there was lockdown, and she's talked about how Gen Z are having higher expectations for the workplace than the generations that came before. COVID lockdowns put on the radar for people of all ages. And while Gen Z is keen to find a better way of working, there are some differences in opinion between the generations, something that hit during a presentation at her first industry conference. The Secession on successful pitching advised women to act like ladies and not be cute and forget about nicknames. So she says there's plenty of big personalities in our industry, and it seems to me like that has helped them to get to where they are today. Would they have the connections and relationships if they had watered down who they are? So much of today's agency culture is geared towards encouraging inclusion and diversity, and to me that goes hand in hand with being yourself. Positive workplaces are built on authenticity, and if the ideal version of professionalism fails to take this into account, the approach can come across as fake and disingenuous. Well, that's what's going on with Hollywood. There's a lot of fakeness and disingenuous across the board. So there's people talking about how having work flexibility, if they're going to be in the media industry, they don't need to be working the kind of hours and the kind of grueling labor that their predecessors did. It's this whole thing where you're not going to change the dynamic of Hollywood overnight. It's been taking a long time. And even the Hollywood focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion is so slow. I mean, hell, I see media stories I can bring up all the time where they're saying that Black representation in the media, Latino representation in the media are still lower than expected. Like, there's never going to be a barrier that's enough. But that's what they say all the time. I get it. And then what happens now with the media anyway? Well, we know that the new thing right now is mergers and acquisitions. And there's a story from The Wrap that talks about big tech acquisitions of media companies are on the horizon. Who's next? So first would be Apple. Current market cap of nearly 2.3 trillion and tens of billions on cash in hand. That's one thing they bring up. Apple's the newest one, or the most likely. Oh, and I'm sorry, the movie Coda was on Apple Plus. So Apple prefers to innovate itself. They acquired Dr. Dre's Beats for a cool $3 billion. Apple Music now has catapulted Spotify to become Spotify's biggest challenger. And membership in the Apple family of cross-promotion has its privileges after all. Netflix right now is still the streaming video clash of the titans, the leader. And that Amazon can also be a possible buyer of media down the line of just picking up other companies. Google or Microsoft in the same vein, that you could see that a number of big tech companies could go ahead and get themselves in the content market and just start buying television, movie, and streaming platforms to complement what they're doing. You know, that's part of the deal as well. The big four tech giants don't just want Netflix's massive international reach and global brand. They crave franchise content. So they'll need to go elsewhere. Since Netflix carries few IP franchise content gems, content franchises are certainly a major motivator for mergers and acquisitions now, but they come with instant brand recognition and built-in audience and can be reimagined over and over again for ages, which is why Amazon bought MGM. That's going on across the board. And that there are smaller content and franchise-driven deals that are out there that could become acquired by bigger companies down the line. In the story from The Wrap, they also mentioned how you could see studios like A24, Anonymous Content, and Blumhouse could be up for sale. And some company might come in and acquire. But there are streaming behemoths that will pay up for the A-list content they need to win. There are potential mega deals in the streaming video space. Not saying that will happen now or anytime soon, but they're going to happen. And so the corporate companies are going to do what they always do, just like they did in radio. Deregulation. They're just going to continue to acquire and acquire and acquire and just become bigger and bigger and bigger. And then there are less independent content creators or companies that are being dealt with, that their content's available in the mainstream culture. Because you got a lot more companies that are going to be working towards the mainstream, the counterculture, the crossover culture. That's what their idea is. You got that going for you. Let's talk about the lack of news media, because that's also a new thing that came out. The Gallup company, they put out a new poll, and it says that Americans' trust in media remains at a record low. 34% have a great deal or fair amount of confidence in media. 38% with no trust at all outpaces great deal or fair amount for the first time. And of the media that's being trusted, 70% of Democrats, 14% of Republicans, 27% of independents. That's it. Only 7% of Americans have a great deal of trust and confidence in the media. 27% with a fair amount. That's not good. Also, 28% of U.S. adults say they do not have very much confidence, and the newspapers only have 38%. Or actually, 38% have none. TV and radio, that's for newspapers, TV and radio. Lack of trust, 38%. And this is the first time the percentage of Americans with no trust at all in the media is higher than the percentage with a great deal or fair amount combined. That's it. And it's great where Gallup here in this link to the article, you can find at broadcasterspodcast.com. You can actually see the 50-year scale of America's trust in mass media. It was a steady decline, but then around 1997, everything just went and buckled. And now we're over the line where media needs to change, but it's corporate owned. And there's really not anybody that's doing anything about it. Now, they go into like the political parts, but I'm not going to talk about. But I'm going to go into the bottom line that they did find in the survey. America's confidence in the media has been anemic for nearly 2 decades, and the latest findings further document that distrust. The current level is the media's full, fair, and accurate reporting of the news is the second lowest on record. This new confidence reading follows Gallup's historically low confidence with both TV news and newspapers in June, and a new low in the annual rating of the honesty and ethics of television reporters. Partisans remain sharply divided on the news of the views of the media, with most Democrats versus few Republicans trusting it. These divisions are entrenched and show no signs of abating, which that's pretty much accurate. Not much you could do. All right, a few more stories before we wrap things up. And what happens is when you see this kind of thing with media, you would think, well, where's the change? Well, we talked about Substack. We've seen other outlets outside of YouTube or other places that are opening up with new content. There's a lot of it out there. Well, how about this story? The former BuzzFeed editor and New York Times reporter Ben Smith. Recently, they launched a new media company called Semaphore. They had $25 million in donations to launch it. So there was a thing that happened where they launched this publication with a trusted news event that somehow didn't see the problem with platforming and amplifying Tucker Carlson as a respectable voice in media. Semaphore has tried to portray itself as a unique take on news, and their introductory post by Smith once again takes this tack. He goes through what he believes are the major pitfalls in modern news. Too many reporters with opinions, too many outlets telling people what they want to hear, too much focus on the U.S., not enough outward bound leaking to other reporters' work. Now, this writer here says all these points are true, but both Semaphore and Smith claim to have a new formula that will fix all of them in one fell swoop. They go longer into what the stories and what they're doing right now. And they go on to say here that the real money is in sacrificing truth to placate everybody, most especially in the U.S., which is what all these companies are built on. The mainstream culture, they want to make money off their intellectual property, what they've invested in. And they're not going to take the chance on new creative projects. It used to be that for every big payoff of a blockbuster movie, then you could allow some creativity, a small indie feature to show up in the theaters in a full screen release, but they don't do that anymore. But even this publication is also going to get, they're going to get attacked because it doesn't matter. Now, as we know with all the streaming services, they're doing a lot of content. And the Wrap actually talked about this as well. They had a presentation where they said that, now they're talking here with Creative Media Chairman Peter Sathi, that Hollywood is in a period of transition, not a free fall, and it's including mergers and acquisitions. Whoa. You have a company like Netflix, which was kind of leading the charge. Now it's a transition from a single revenue stream to a multiple business. And then you have the other media companies working on their streaming. So there's a lot of transition. There's an unbelievable amount of opportunity. You have a moment where audiences are more connected to content creators and advertisers than they had ever been. Oh, excuse me. Eric Hodge was the one that quoted that, who runs the RAIN Group. Another person that spoke here is a panelist. Carlos Jimenez is the managing director of Moelis & Company. They're investment bankers. Says clients are hesitating to jump in the new mergers and acquisitions deals in light of a struggling economy and Hollywood's own slowdown in the streaming boom, as evidenced by Netflix's recent loss of subscribers. Well, not anymore. Third quarter changed everything. So it's now the best time to seize the opportunity. This company's job is not to sit on the sidelines for 6 months waiting for economic change, but to really find where the opportunities are, where there is disruption, and creating an opportunity. So if it's finding those talented managers, the solid business plans that are going to give capital, looking at this period of time versus sit back and watch what their peers are doing. You can try to see what happens here. Like, you want these companies, you would like to see if they're actually going to be responding to what's going on, to competition. But they're not looking at those other outlets as competition. That's what's going on. They don't care. The other stories I want to bring up, oh, by the way, Elon Musk is going to cut 75% of the Twitter workforce. So I don't know if you're going to see the dynamic of Twitter change altogether and what's going to be added to it, but that's a big chunk. So a couple of stories where there's a big woe is me for music and others. One says about how live music is falling apart. And they talked to a music industry journalist, author of The Final Days of EMI, Selling the Pig, and he has a new book, Leaving the Building, The Lucrative Afterlife of Music Estates. Eamon Ford wrote this, and he says that the live music business is badly broken from many angles. He brings up reasons why live music is broken, and these are down directly or indirectly to the live music business itself. The race back into playing live was swift and deemed necessary as acts missed the audience connection, as much as they missed the revenue from gigging. But while everything was in dry dock during pandemic, most acts were not earning much. Some they used to be able to count on, and was snatched away from them. So the one thing that spanned faster than normal was the hamster wheel of social media, but the more the algorithm was fed, the more it needed to be fed. Part of the content, it would be like a surly teenager forgets you'd be ghosted by the machine. And now acts feel the need to prostrate themselves before the audience algorithm. If you're not actively touring, there's the underlying fear that you'll be forgotten and some other act will steal your audience, or both. Acts of all sizes and are canceling or postponing shows as things start to prove too much for them. And they give a lot of names that have gone through this already. Question is, how long can the metaphorical tour bus stay on the road as the wheels start to come off? Windshield cracks and the engine bursts into flames. There isn't even a hard shoulder left over to pull over to. All there's left is a smoking bomb crater. So, live business, live music, there's also been a lot of people that have been getting sick or other things that are going on where people can't finish their performances. Yeah, live music's still starting to be a bad thing. I don't know what comes up here now. What comes next? Couldn't tell you. I'm talking about the music industry looking to go ahead and have a tussle with TikTok over payouts. We already know about that. Instead of getting just a bulk bailout, they want to be able to have something more tangible. According to Wall Street Journal, ByteDance wants the music industry to license RHOA for 12 plus more global territories with eventual plan to launch in the U.S. And there are some companies that don't want to relicense. They all want to find their way to make royalties. So TikTok might be stuck on it. I'm going to leave it there. There's more I can talk about, but I'm starting to go to sleep. And I'll leave some stories for later because I'm sure we're getting a little bit light on the content load, which is why I brought Meghan Markle up at the start of the show. Why not? We'll leave it right there. So we might go a little bit short, but this is fine. I think we got more than enough. I just don't think I'm going to add these other stories on. I got a few more that I could put in. I'll table those for next week. That's it for the Broadcasters Podcast. Thanks for listening in, finding as you always do. Come back next week. And remember that content is king, and the control of your content is in your hands.
Thank you for listening to the Broadcasters Podcast. Find all the links to subscribe to the show by going to broadcasterspodcast.com. And don't forget to check out the King of Podcasts wrestling program, the Wrestling is Real podcast, exclusively at wrestlingisreal.com.